So we are just jumping right in here. Welcome back, and hello to anyone new who hasn't visited my channel before. As always, I'm just going to start with the colors. I'm using Sangria, Piñata, and Oregono from Ranger, and some brass. And after I finished this piece, I actually realized that a couple of videos ago I did a piece using the exact same colors, so that might be a bit boring, but I just really like this combination. I think they work so well together. I promise next video I'm gonna use some different colors, so it's not always the same. This video ended up a little bit long, so I have speeded it up just a tiny little bit. I hope that that's okay with you. I feel like you can still see what's happening. While I was filming this, I was actually doing a whole lot of talking, and when I was done and I was going to edit the video, there was no sound at all. Microphone malfunctioned, so that's why I'm doing a voiceover on this. But that also means that during this video, you will see me moving my hands, doing a lot of hand gestures and pointing, and which will look kind of stupid because you can't hear what I was actually saying at the time. So I apologize for that. That might be a bit distracting, but I'm sure I said a lot of good stuff while I was painting, and I'm going to try and remember most of it and say it. Yeah, see, there's me moving my hands and talking about what I wanted to do. So my plan for this piece is that I'm going to start off with the alcohol ink, and then I'm just gonna, the first bit here is not that interesting. I'm kind of gonna do the same as I did in the last video. I'm just gonna put down some ink and some brass and a little bit of alcohol and just make these sort of different spots. And I've already made a mess removing that. As I sort of get a bit further on this piece, I'm going to start going into the, oh, there's a lot of hand gestures. This is actually kind of fun to watch. A little bit later on, I'm going to move into to making some fades and picking up the paper and tilting it around. My favorite technique. But I do sometimes like to start these pieces by just putting down some ink and then moving into making the fades a little bit later, because often this also means that you mix in the colors just a tiny little bit when you start this way, and you get some really nice shades, and you start getting some of those sort of darker lines where the ink are mixing in a little bit. So when I start out like this, it's not very pretty at first, but hopefully it will be later on. So starting off with all this alcohol ink, and I am also going to use acrylic ink on this one. I actually really like acrylic ink. I haven't used it in some time, but I'm going to today. But I'm only going to use it to sort of paint with a brush. I want to paint some branches, some tiny little branches. And the plan is to do that on the left-hand side of the paper. A little spoiler alert, I am actually going to change my mind a little later in this video. But wanted to keep the ink sort of in the middle and on the right-hand side, and do some tiny little branches on the left side. I'm still going to do the branches on the left side, but I'm going to change my mind later on. I'm also in this video sometimes doing a lot of thinking about what it is I want to do. You can see me doing that right now. And that's one of the reasons why I sort of speeded this up a tiny little bit, because I don't rush it when I paint with my inks. I usually take my time, and sometimes I do a lot of thinking. We're just sort of figuring out what it is that I want to do, and that's really, really boring to watch a video where I spent half the time thinking. So that's why I sometimes I edit some stuff out, or I just speed it up a bit like I do on this one. That's just the way I work. I take my time. I don't rush it. If I rush it, I usually end up making stuff that I'm not really happy with. So that's why I'd rather spend a little time thinking, and sometimes I take a few breaks and just walk away. And I did that during this piece too. I wasn't really sure that I wanted to stick to my plan. So I took a break, I came back, and then I actually changed my mind. But I think it turned out for the better. You can be the judge of that at the end of this video. I initially thought I wanted to do these little branches with one of my markers. I got some really nice Copic markers and some gel pens, but I do really like when I want to make these branches, I sometimes really like to paint them on with a brush and with the acrylic ink. I've done this many times before with little branches. I don't think I've showed you this in a video, but the acrylic ink is it just flows so nicely on the paper, and the colors are they're very intense, I think. The reason that I sometimes like painting little branches on my ink paintings is because I paint a lot of trees. I don't just do alcohol ink. I also paint with acrylic paint, and I paint trees, a lot of trees, in all different colors. I might show you some of them one day. But I love painting trees, and one of the things I love the most is the details when I paint trees, all these tiny little branches. I love it so much, and I think it's so much fun to incorporate that into my... See, this is me doing a whole lot of thinking. This is so much fun to watch myself point and... Anyway, I love doing these little branches on my acrylic, and I had someone ask if maybe I could film my little studio, and I might do that someday, and then you can see some of my trees too. But I am going to clean up before I do that, because right now my little studio is it's one big mess, and I actually like when everything is organized in my studio, but sometimes I'm working on many different things at the same time. I'm working on some alcohol ink, and I'm working on some trees and doing commissions, and then it all ends up one big mess. And then I usually go completely crazy and I clean it up, because I like things organized. So if I do film my little studio one day, I'm gonna clean up first, so you don't see all my mess. So maybe in an upcoming video, I'll give you a little tour of my studio. It's not really all that big. I just have it in my house. The biggest room in my house is my studio. You can see here that I've started going into doing my fades, and this is when the piece starts beginning to look a lot more interesting. I think so. It looks boring at first, but when you start with these fades, that's when the magic happens. This is me again, thinking about the direction I want this to be in. I wasn't really sure I wanted it to go out, and I wanted to go to the right and to the left. I had a plan when I started, but at this point in the piece, I started changing my mind a little bit about what it was that I wanted. I wanted to make sure that there was some space, enough space for the branches that I'm going to do later. So I wanted the ink to move a little out to the side. When I'm going to start doing these branches at the end of this video, I'm going to do them with black acrylic ink. You can do any color you want, but I like black, and when I paint my trees, I always use black for the trunk and for the branches. Just because why does it always have to be brown? You know, why not black? I just think it's fun. So my trees have always have black branches, and so I wanted to do that on this one too. I'm thinking now maybe I should also do a video where I use the acrylic inks in the same way as the alcohol ink. You can actually combine the two. Acrylic ink, you can use it with the alcohol. The acrylic ink is water-based, so it's sometimes a bit more tricky to mix it in with the alcohol, but you can actually do it. Sometimes I pre-mix it. I dilute it with the alcohol first. You sort of force it together. But you can use it with the alcohol ink, and you can use both the acrylic and the alcohol ink together, which is actually quite fun. So maybe I should do a video with that. I'm going to make a mental note. And as always, if you have any idea for something you'd like me to do, just let me know. I usually write all these ideas down for videos that I want to do or that someone else asks for. So leave a comment if you have anything else. Now I think we are approaching the point in this piece where I changed my mind about what I wanted to do. So this is me starting to remove a little bit of the ink. I didn't really know sort of how I wanted the ink to be on the right side, and then I took a little break. I had a cup of coffee and I came back and I thought, what if I don't get the ink all the way out to the right side of the paper, but sort of keep it in the middle and then do these little branches on both the left side and the right side. I hadn't really done that in that sort of way before. So I removed a little bit, and then I'm going to try and move the ink sort of in that direction that I just pointed in, so that there is a little bit of space left on the right hand side. So I'm going to do branches. They're going to be a little bit longer on one side where there's more space, and a little shorter on the other side. But I thought this might be fun. So this is me trying to not move the ink too far to the side, so that there's just a tiny bit of space left. Now I'm actually really happy that I took that little break and had that cup of coffee, because if I had just continued, I'm pretty sure I would have filled out all the paper on the right side with ink, and I feel like that would have been a little too much. It wouldn't have worked as well together with the tiny thin little branches that I'm going to do. Sort of keeping it in the middle makes it feel a little lighter. I think it will fit a little bit better with the branches, but sort of composition and how you build up your piece, it's tricky sometimes, and that's why I always tell you guys, you know, if you're sort of stuck or you feel like you're about to overdo it, just take that little break. And usually when you sort of come back to it after a while and look at it, you will know what it is that you want to do. Sometimes what you want to do ends up sort of crappy, but sometimes it ends up really good. So take that little break if you're stuck or feel like you're definitely gonna overdo it. I ended up being so happy with keeping the ink in the middle and making some extra branches that I hadn't really planned on doing. And sort of the way I build up this piece and these fades, I ended up with these really nice colors in the center of the piece. There's some very dark spots that I really, really like. It gives it that lovely contrast to those fades. That it's wispy, but it has something a little extra in the center of the piece. This one also has a lot of negative space, but I feel like it works well when I do the branches. They need some air, and that negative space composition. For me, it also has a lot to do with what size is the piece that you're doing. Oh, here we are, moving on to the acrylic ink. The one I'm using is Liquitex, which I really, really like. I'm just going to put on a few drops on a little piece of paper and then get my tiny little brush. I am starting these branches from a place where the ink is really, really dark, because that makes it look sort of, it's a very natural place for the branches to start. Don't want them to start in the middle of the fade where there isn't a lot of color. This sort of makes it look a lot more natural, I think. It's a very tiny brush that I'm using. I think it's a size 0, so, but that's really good for the smaller pieces when you want them to be really thin. For a bigger piece, I would probably have used a bigger brush and then just this one for the really, really tiny branches. Just quickly again about the whole negative space and composition. That might actually be a good idea for a video too, because for me there's a very big difference sometimes in the way I sort of build up my painting depending on whether it's a really tiny piece or a big piece. So that might be an idea for a video. The branches, I'm trying to sort of move them in very different directions. Again, I'm starting from a place where the ink is really, really dark. If you sort of, I sort of, one goes out to the right and one goes out to the left, that makes it look more alive, I think. So doing these branches, just make them move, I guess is the best way to say it. I would love to hear what you think about this. I had very big doubts about how this was going to end up sort of halfway through, but I ended up being really happy with just keeping the ink in the middle. There's not actually all that much ink on this piece, but I feel like the branches sort of makes it all happen. Very happy with this piece. While I'm just doing the last few branches, I just want to say thank you for watching again. I hope that you have enjoyed this little video. I'm so hooked now on doing these videos. I actually really, really like it, and I really like that you all leave so many comments. I feel like we're sort of doing this whole ink video adventure together. It's so much fun for me, so I'm definitely going to continue. Thank you for watching.